Hello again, everyone, and I'm ready to begin the new material for the Adobe Animate part of our show. This is Class 7, and virtually the same material I would have done in the physical classroom. So, what I'd recommend is either prepare a folder where you'd like to save today's material or just get started. You could, of course, save to the desktop. As you can see, mine is rather messy. And I'm going to go ahead and get Animate. I want to point something out before we actually begin with today's primary topic. The topic is a special type of graphic symbol which we are going to call an animated graphic symbol. So you've made symbols when we were classic tweening, but I'd like you to take note of this bird and its flapping wings. So it's a very simple graphic bird that flaps its wings along the way. Now, if I get back to frame 1, this here is the bird layer, and this stuff is just background elements. I'm going to call it BG. The bird layer, though, if you notice, it's got one keyframe here, and it's got one apparently in the middle. Here, let's get a look. No, not in the middle. So it's got one here. Oh yeah, there we go. Sorry. Let me just zoom back a bit so we can see everything. So the bird starts here in keyframe 1. It's off stage. And then when the playhead approaches, getting near 2 seconds, it reaches another keyframe. And that keyframe's only there because I wanted the bird to switch directions and then come back to the right. So in a sense, it's making a kind of sideways V, if you will. It's coming from the top right and heading left, but doesn't quite make it because it then changes directions. But if you notice, there's not a million keyframes to account for the wings. And I'd like to show you why that is by giving you a peek in the library. So here's a plain old graphic symbol, obviously the bird, but if I double click it to go into symbol editing mode, you could see that it's got a fairly complex little timeline. So I'm in the library, so to speak, in symbol editing mode for the graphic symbol called bird. And you'll notice there's no tweening in here at all. It's a type of frame by frame. But in all honesty, I'm going, fairly large distances. Here's in frame 1 is one bird and one drawing. And in frame 3, it's just changed a little bit. 1 to 3. No tweening involved. Changes a little bit. Gets a more subtle changes, and it kind of goes through one span. This is the same as the very first frame of the timeline. So if I play this here, so it's a raise and then a bit of a glide, but it's not going anywhere. So this type of graphic symbol doesn't go anywhere. It's about animations that occur in place. If you were waving, your arm doesn't leave your body. And if you were standing up through the top of a convertible car and you were still waving, the whole car would move while you were waving. So that's what I call an independent motion. This bird could fly anywhere it likes, but it is going to need to flap its wings. The flapping is built in. The change of location is not. If I go back to the main timeline, all I had to do there was change the bird's location. All right, enough of that. If you're joining me, let's open a new document. Okay. I'm going to choose a 1280 by 720 stage. I think I am going to change the frame rate to our usual 24 frames per second. So here's the size, 1280 by 720. Here's the frame rate that we're used to. I want to get comfortable, as I always say. Command 2 will show me the whole stage, but I often back up a little bit more because I often do use off-stage territory, to leave the actors. Now before we get to the bird, I want to try something easier. I'd like you to draw a rectangle, plain old rectangle, somewhere on the left. Whether you have a stroke or not is up to you. It might be a little easier without it, so I'm going to double click mine carefully right on the stroke and delete it just to simplify. We're going to make this into a graphic symbol. So, select your new drawing, convert to symbol. It's very important that you call it a graphic symbol, that you select graphic symbol. Critical. And give it a name. I'm going to call it Boxy. Now, we're on the main timeline. If you want it to move, even though we've done nothing fancy to it yet, let's make it cross the stage. So, it's already a graphic symbol. So I'm going to come over here to the timeline, and I'm control clicking to turn on my classic tween. Let's see, this is only 1 second. I think I'm going to go 2 seconds deep. F5 to extend the timeline. Now I want it to move. So there's more than one way I could have handled it. But right now I turned it on, but it's still parked in the driveway. If the goal is, in that very last instant, it should have crossed the stage, I could drag it over there now. But first, like I did, you'd have to be sure to bring your playhead there. I remember in class, a lot of people seem to prefer F6ing. I'm at a laptop right now, so I have to hold down my FN key. So I just F6'd, and I'm going to drag it across the stage. I know some of you prefer the other approach, where you just get the playhead in the right position. Don't bother to F6, and just drag it. We know when you change location in a classic tween, it makes a keyframe for you, if you didn't do it yourself. So here it is, plain old, going across. Nothing new. The exciting stuff is going to happen inside. All right, I'd like you to locate your library, find the graphic symbol, and double click its icon to get into symbol editing mode. Now here we are in symbol editing mode. Our goal here is to make sure that this doesn't move left, right, up, or down, that it doesn't change location, but it can change shape in place. So what I'm going to do is, I think what I'm going to do this time is just do a little frame by frame. So I'm going to go over just one frame, and I'm going to F6, FN F6, and I'm going to change it a little tiny bit. I'm going to bring in each side just a little bit. I'm going to FN F6, do a little bit of frame by frame is what's going on here. Oops, if I move it, I better Command Z. That would ruin everything. The whole idea is it could do something, but it has to stay in place. Every time I blow it, Command Z. Try it again. Got to get right on the edge there, because if we see those little dots, I'm going to move it. F6 again, in my case, FN F6. And I'm going to take this out, in a little further. Now what's going to happen is this tiny animation here is just going to keep looping when it's played together with the location change that we made. In other words, on the main stage, it's been told where to go. In the library, it's got its independent movement going on. Symbol editing mode. I'm going to back out to go to the scene. Now let's see if I can do a better job of explaining this. First, I made this rectangle, and I turned it into a graphic symbol. Then I did a regular kind of movement, nothing new, something we've learned a long time ago. The whole idea is, though, it wouldn't have been very interesting if that had stayed a square all along. For me to create this kind of complexity, though, it was best for me to go into the symbol itself. And in only 4 frames, I was able to get it to do that. The beauty of it is it continues to do that for as long as I need. 2 seconds in this case. That would have been a lot of frames if I'd done it all here. I'd like to do that demonstration one more time. I'm going to attempt to explain things a little differently. I just did Command N instead of going to the File menu, using the same size and the same frame rate, and I'm clicking Create. Again, I want to get comfortable. This time, I'm going to turn off the stroke right away, and maybe change my fill color. So this is the star of the show, who's currently doing nothing. I want him to pulsate while it travels across stage. So I have choices about which I do first, the movement across stage or the pulsation that's going to happen in symbol editing mode. But either way, the first step is to select it and make it into a good old graphic symbol. Alright, graphic symbol. I'm going to call this one Boxy 2. And I say, alright. I'm going to do the kind of motion I want here just to understand how he's going to behave on stage. I know that my goal is to make that box pulsate, almost like it's inhaling and exhaling along the way. But first, I'm going to do the motion on the stage. So I'm going to come right over here and turn on my classic tween on that keyframe. And I think I'm going to make this take 4 seconds, so I'm getting all the way out to 4 seconds. And I like to F5. There are faster ways in truth, but I want to get everybody used to this idea of starting in a certain frame of time. You could add more, take more away, but it's good to start getting used to estimating time. 4 seconds. Okay, so we're going to have it hit this wall in 1 second, and then a second later, then the 3rd second here, and then return. So here I am at the 1 second mark in frame 24, and I'm going to drag it up and let it make its own keyframe. I'm going to go further, second down, drag the object to the right, and let it make its own keyframe. Basic, classic tweening. Then I'm going to go to the 3rd second, drag it right here in the middle of this wall. I mean, go into the dead center of each wall as best I can. Then I'll go to the very end and bring it here. Now this may not match up with frame 1, and I want to just take a peek. Frame 1 looks a little high. I'm going to just lower it by eye. But right now this is all I've got. Nothing unusual here. I think it's a good idea though to save this demonstration. And I'm going to call this animated graphic symbol 1.fla. And you might want to keep a location that you use for this kind of thing. I have one of my own. And I think I'm going to make a quick Class 7 folder here. Thing is, the exciting part is when we tell that box what to do while it's traveling. So let's go back to the library and double-click the icon. So we're going into the actor's dressing room, as I've sometimes said. Now in here, I could use any kind of animation on this timeline. This is a unique timeline that belongs only to this one object. The trick is, don't let the object go anywhere. That's already being taken care of. This is what it should do in place. So I'm going to repeat what we did last time. I'm going to go 1 frame over in F6. In my case, I'm holding down FN. And I'm going to make some small change. Whoops, but not that one. once those dots show up, I'm in trouble. It means I click too far inside. So I'm going to be more careful. All right, now I'm going to copy that again. And very carefully this time, taking a little further in. Whoops, not as careful as I thought. All right, I'm going to save as I go. Now, this is all I did. Whoop, a pucker. Now, when I come back to the main timeline, let's get all the way back to the beginning here. Let me neaten up a little bit so everybody could see what's going on. It's doing both. Cool. Hello again. I'd like you to get a look at this looping, and let's take a peek at it in Flash Player so we could really focus on what just happened. So this pulsating object isn't really the primary point. The primary point is how much work that saved. This is a 4-second animation that we timed early on, so let's just say roughly 100 frames. But it keeps looping over 4 frames worth of what I called a pucker, where it squeezes in. Every 4 frames, it's repeating it. So that's 25 times we would have had to make those frames by hand to achieve this without the internally animated quality of this graphic symbol. In other words, that graphic symbol was just a box. We went inside and we made it just pucker in place, 4 frames to squeeze in. By using that object, which was now a miniature movie, we're able to make it bounce around, do whatever we want, fly through the air, you might say, but all along it's doing what its own private timeline is telling it to do. And there you have it, part 1 of animated graphic symbols.